Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Can we get serious now?
One thing that did happen during the 60s was some music of an unusual or experimental nature did get recorded and did get released. Now look at who the executives were in those companies at those times. Not hip young guys. These were cigar-chomping old guys who looked at the product that came and said, I don't know. Who knows what it is? Record it, stick it out. If it sells, all right. We were better off with those guys than we are now with the supposedly hip young executives who are making the decisions of what people should see and hear in the marketplace.
Success in the music business begins with a dream, a vision. This podcast will give you, the listener, the insight and tools to turn that vision into a reality. Meet the industry professionals who work day by day behind the scenes, helping to make those dreams come true. Welcome to the business side of music.
Sitting across the table today from us in this COVID state of mind. And I'm glad she's here. I understand this is your first interview you've done live for a while.
It is.
Heidi Newfield is here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Bob. It's good to be here.
Native Californian, just like me.
Yes.
You
And not too
up-
far away from each
Not
other.
too far from each other.
No.
You grew up on a quarter horse farm in Harrodsburg, California?
Healdsburg.
Healdsburg,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Windsor, kind of Santa Rosa area, Sonoma County, pretty much in general.
You think I would know how to pronounce it, but you're far enough north.
Almost everybody gets Healdsburg wrong because it's spelled very differently than most people think Healdsboro, and it's actually Healdsburg. So it's spelled weird and hard to.
Healdsburg, California.
Yes.
There, I got it right.
You got it.
So along the lines, for those of you that may not know who she is, she co-founded Trick Pony in 1999 along with Ira Dean and Keith Burns. Went on to record 3 albums, had 8 singles on the Billboard country charts, including the one we all know, Poor Me, On a Night Like This, Just What I Do, and On a Mission, and The Bride. You also did It's a Heartache, which was the Ronnie Scott song, right? That I think you wrote with Steve Wolf or Bonnie Tyler.
Well done. Yeah, you've done your homework. Absolutely.
And then you were a guest vocalist on Cletus T. Judd's rendition of Ray Stevens' Get Tarzan.
That song, it's like I've forgotten I even did that thing. It was just kind of a favor, kind of fun thing. And then it keeps coming back in interviews. I go, oh gosh, I did do that.
Keeps coming back to haunt you.
It comes back to haunt me, yes. No, it was cool. It was cool. I think Keith Urban was on the same track with me too, so it was kind of cool.
And then you worked with someone else we've had on the show here, Tony Brown, producer.
Of course, yes.
Which you did the ballad Johnny in June, which went to number 11 on the charts back in 2008.
Yeah, there were multiple charts back then. You had Billboard, you had R&R, Radio and Records. In one of the charts, it went to number 9. So I was ultimately, back then you would count your highest charting record. Right. So it was considered a top 10. But Radio and Records went away, and so it's now just noted as a top 11 record. But
it also went on to become a gold album for you, right?
Platinum.
Platinum.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
I guess, Paul McCartney was right. If you sell 1 million of anything, you're doing, okay, I suppose.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Yeah, it was a special song, very much so. It came from an authentic place, having spent time with Johnny and June. Little did I know that I'd sit down in a room and write about him later on.
We're going to talk about your new album that's coming out, but let's back up a little bit.
Okay.
How did you get started in the business?
Well, it was kind of about as natural an evolution as one could be. I think when I was about 4 or 5 years old, I came up in a household full of, as you mentioned earlier, on a ranch, and that sort of, I was a 4-H girl. My 2 sisters, older sisters, we were all in sports and 4-H and running from practice to working with our animals, and we raised just about everything. We had cattle, quarter horses, largely a quarter horse ranch, though, pretty big operation. So I broke horses for my family, and that lifestyle lends itself to country music. It just does. And so country music, I came up in a household where my mom, and for that matter, my stepdad, were purists. I'm grateful for that, actually. My mom would bang on my door and say, that's not country music, And it's so, I remember, being annoyed as a kid, but I grew up in a household all the way going back to the very beginning of country music. She had Jimmy Rogers records and sang senior records, and And as we went on, there was just a plethora of vinyl that was always there and radio for that matter, that was chock full of great songs, classic songs that we can, consider to this day, not throwaway songs, and classic artists that to this day we revere. And so I'm grateful for it. Really paved the way for me. And I started messing around on the family piano. We had an upright piano in the house. Started singing, and my mom was kind enough to give me piano lessons. And then I have the age-old, such a cliche story, but I had a mean old piano teacher.
I think we've heard that story on this show before.
Yes. I don't know what it is that, all you piano teachers out there, just be nice. It's not hard. Mrs. Young, and I'll never forget. So she taught me the basics, and to this day I still play a little piano and I still write with piano. But because Mrs. Young was just, bless her heart, just not the easiest person to get along with, I asked my mom if I could quit piano and start picking up the guitar. She said, the minute that you can sit down and play me a boogie woogie song, and I mean a hardcore boogie woogie song, without messing up, we'll get you a guitar. And we didn't have a lot of money. It wasn't like, we were kind of cash poor and horse rich. So I practiced and all that right hand, left hand coordination kind of thing on a boogie woogie kind of thing is so easy. And I worked hard, got her done, and she stuck to her words, probably when she should have said, nope, you're getting good. Now we're going to keep it up. But I was able to take guitar lessons, and, I'm grateful for that. And then along came, all through that journey, my grandfather, also a cliche, grandfather played the harmonica. And at any one of our family gatherings, it didn't take anything for our family to celebrate, to get 18, 20 people together to celebrate. And at the end of every celebration or gathering, my grandfather Clarence would push his chair back and reach over in this one drawer and pull out one of his Hohner Marine Band harmonicas. I remember at just a really young age, like just a toddler, being so drawn to that sound. And I remember thinking, that's the most lonesome sound I've ever heard. And I wanted one. And so I, got a harp or two, and I started messing with it. And that led me over time throughout this journey and getting into my teenage years and so forth to the blues, and started listening to Lil Walter and Sonny Boy, and so many other greats that I could mention. So harmonica has always been a staple instrument for me as well, and a unique instrument for a woman, because you don't see a lot of women out there really getting down on the harp. And I don't know why, but I've become kind of an ambassador for the instrument, especially with Hohner. So at 13 years old, I asked my mom to come here to Nashville and record my first demo. How that happened is quite funny, Bob. I was sitting in our living room, and of course, being a horse operation, you make your money off of, you've got a breeding operation, a training operation, and people are coming in to buy horses that you've got for sale. And a woman came in our living room that was there looking at horses for sale. I was sitting there plucking on my guitar and singing, and I was belting out some song, and she walked in and I stopped. And she said, no, please keep going. And so I did. She listened for a bit. She smiled and nodded, and they walked into the kitchen and sat down at the kind of bar area in the kitchen and poured a cup of coffee, and she broke out her checkbook and she said, before we even talk about horses, I have one question. What is it going to take to get that little girl to Nashville?
Wow.
To get started? She said, I would like to be a part of that. And because we were not wealthy folks by any means, her name was Ginger Crowley, and she's gone now, but to this day she will always kind of be the first person that sort of stepped up and helped me get here. And from then on, as you know, I did like a 4-song custom, quote unquote, custom session, which ultimately, ends up, you find out Aunt Sony ends up making a whole lot more money than a 4-song demo session should cost. But I got to work with Buddy Emmons, and I had an all-star, like just legendary band. So I felt like, to this day, I can still play that tape and be proud of it. It sounded really great. So we did okay, and that was a start. And then I started coming back and forth here. I just knew instinctively what I wanted to do. First time I stepped on stage, I was 6 years old. I did not have a stage mom, although she was extremely supportive. There was a big gathering out in the middle of Cloverdale, California, up in the hills on a big trail ride, and the band was on a generator because you're way back in the boondocks. And
Right.
I just walked up the side stairs, and in between songs, I tugged on the lead guitar player's shirt and said, "Hey, mister, can I sing a few songs with you?" He looked down and saw, I was 6, and he said, "Well, sure, what do you want to do?" And I said, "Delta Dawn, key of C." And that's what we started off with, because I had a little bit of natural rasp in my voice, even, it's been all my life. So Tanya was one of many of my mentors, if you will, the people that I leaned on to listen to. So, I got that applause and game over. I mean, it was just a combination. It was sort of the perfect storm. And I knew what I wanted to do, and I've never, sort of like I put blinders on, and I never really veered off that path.
We're going to take a break, get a word in from one of our sponsors, and when we come back, we're going to talk about this brand new solo project that you actually did with Jim Moose Brown from Bob Seger's band.
Yes, Jim and I, or Moose and I never call him Jim, co-produced for the first time. It was a lot of fun.
We're going to talk about the Barfly Sessions. Heidi Newfield is in the studio with us.
Hey, this is Michael Omardian, and you are listening to The Business Side of Music.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Hi everyone, I'm Larry Butler, and I want to send you a free digital copy of my new book, The Singer-Songwriter Rulebook, 101 Ways to Help You Improve Your Chances of Success. That's right, everything you need to know to launch your career as a singer-songwriter, all based on my 40 years in the live performance arena, and believe me, I've seen it all. In my book, you'll find the 10 things you have to deal with before even thinking about becoming a singer-songwriter performer. You'll also learn about the 5 things every singer-songwriter can do this weekend to make their live show better. 5 things I can guarantee that you are not doing already. Plus, there's tips on songwriting and staging, photo and video shoots, publishing, merch, dozens of other topics. All written for people who don't particularly like to read. And again, it's free. Just go to the Business Side of Music website homepage and look for my book cover. Click on it, and a free digital copy of my book will be yours. I'm Larry Butler, and I approve of this message. Thanks.
Are you curious about Gordon Lightfoot's songwriting process, or what it was like working with Prince in the 80s? Have you ever given any thought to what goes into a golf course design or writing a book? I'm Steve Waxman, the host of The Creationist, a podcast about people who create. Each episode features a different creator sharing stories that I hope will inspire your own creativity. The Creationist is available now on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Back in the studio, Heidi Newfield is with us. We're going to talk about the Barfly Sessions. In my research on doing that, of course, I found out you and Jim Moose Brown are friends, along with co-producers on this. And, of course, he brings a little bit of provenance to the game because he's
Absolutely.
the keyboardist and the band leader for Bob Seger's Silver Bullet Band. You wrote or co-wrote the songs on this album, all of them?
12 out of the 14.
12 out of the 14.
There's 2 outside songs on there.
And some of the songwriters, oh my gosh, John Randall were one of them, who wrote Whiskey Lullaby with Whisper and Bill Anderson.
Right. John has been a friend for a long time, and you know this town. It's like, it's kind of a wheel, a spin, and at some point you either... It's a writer's night, it's a benefit, it's an awards show kind of situation. You run back into, we're kind of a community, and John has been a part of that in my world. And ironically, he co-wrote the song Whitley's Tombstone that's on this record. I did not write that song. I found it. How it came about, the 2 outside songs that are on the record, John Randall wrote with Leslie Satcher and Kent Blasey, 2 of my favorite people and people I co-write with on a regular basis. And you'll see Leslie's name all over this record because we co-write quite often and don't live very far from each other. And I consider her a dear friend. And how ironic it was that I was sitting at my one and only pitch meeting that Moose and I went to later in the afternoon on Music Row, and one plugger played The Blues Is My Business, which we'll get into, of course, which ended up being a duet with Delbert McClinton, which is a completely raucous blues, kind of a raw, funky thing, one would think. And then I was pitched by Reed Geyer, the John Randall, Leslie Satcher, Camp Blasey song, Whitley's Tombstone, which ended up being a duet with Randy Houser, my buddy, could not be more different than Blues Is My Business. It's a polar opposite. It's very sparse, very, very country, as one can imagine by the title. So those are the two outside songs on the record.
When you get back to everything that you've done with Trick Pony and as your solo career, is this something you feel that you're getting back to your roots on this project? Is this something you've always wanted to do and never had the chance to do, or is this something you're expanding on?
Oh, great question. I'd say it's a little bit of both. I have always been, just like, the story I told you earlier about my mother, banging on the door and us being kind of country music, I'm steeped in it. And I'm proud to be a country singer. However, I just as equally love good rock and roll and good blues. And when I say good, I mean, you and I both know there's kind of, there's sort of the cheap version, and then there's the songs that, you might not remember a year from now. And then there's the types of artists and voices and artistry and songs and songwriters that, your goal is to create something that will be everlasting, that will stick around. So, yeah, this record is built on a foundation of all of my influences growing up. So it's got, the country is bone country. It's Gary Stewart honky tonk. You can practically smell the sawdust on the floor and the stale beer, and that's what I wanted. And then there's some Bakersfield in there with a song I wrote with Al Anderson and Leslie Satcher called I Could Fall For You, that I asked Jim Lauderdale to come in and join me. One of those kind of Buck and Don harmonies on that, and he's, as I said, steeped in that music. And so I just didn't want any rules on this record. I wanted to, even at the cost of not being able to be played by today's standards, not being able to be played on current country radio, I said, well, let's open the door to Americana. I know they're not going to probably, because I've had some success in current country music, I was warned that the Americana family doesn't necessarily, when you've had success in other genres, don't expect them to just open their arms wide open and say, welcome to the family. They often, the opposite is true. I had to ask myself, am I willing to kind of almost start back at square one? And that's sort of what this album felt like in a really refreshing way. The creativity, picking the band, writing these songs, the flow of the sessions, it was like we picked like-minded players to Moose and myself. And what I mean by that is Moose is somebody much like me he very much appreciates and reveres country music and its instrumentation, its past, its traditions, and he respects that, and so do I. And so, if you're going in that direction, you can bet that he's a wonderful collaborator to help build that. But he was born in Detroit, Michigan, and he's steeped in, that good, I keep using that word, but he's just so knowledgeable, and it's natural to him he's got a little Muscle Shoals in there. He's got some rhythm and blues. He's got a big bag of tricks. So he really listens to the song, the feel. Between the two of us, it was just a joy to kind of pick players who were like-minded, who are not just twangers, but can also rock out, can also get way down deep and dark and go to the singer-songwriter kind of edge of things, know when to play and when not to play, more importantly.
Did you use the same session players for all the songs?
We used the same session players for the sort of the core of the entire record and cut everything. Michael Rhodes, Dave Rowe. Michael Rhodes, of course, on electric bass, Dave Rowe on upright bass. Did probably equal time. The great Bobby Terry, who plays just about everything there is to play, but there's something about the way the man plays steel that just, I don't know, it makes me feel like I'm listening to an old Ernest Tubb. And maybe it's because he's a Houston, Texas boy, and it's in his blood. I don't know. But he also can turn right around, and he's very quiet. He's listening to whether it's a work tape or a demo, just kind of closes his eyes and goes over and picks up, the 51 Martin or the gut string or this or that. And that's the kind of people we wanted. Fred Eldringham, who plays drums in Sheryl Crow's band and has also played on many Willie Nelson records and is really becoming an A session drummer and percussionist. Such a joy to work with. So much fun and such a big bag of tricks. Grabbed David Grissom from Austin, Texas, who's a wonderful bluesman, but he can also twang a little bit, and just a really colorful, guy to be around. And then you've got Moose, who's a multi-instrumentalist. A lot of people don't know that he's a great guitar player.
Along with a big Hammond B3 player.
Oh, he's so known, so best known for his, piano skills and B3, Hammond B3 and Worley and all of that stuff, but anything with keys on it. But he is equally as creative behind the board. And we made a good team because my sort of where I fall short, he could step up, and there was never any, I was talking to him about who should we, this song feels like it needs, I don't know, Delbert or something. He's like, yeah, go get Delbert. Let's do it.
So let's talk about that for a minute. The Blues Is My Business. You did a duet with Delbert McClinton.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
Well, as I mentioned, the song was pitched to me, and I had no idea that it had been around for many years. It was written, I think, back in the early 90s, if I'm not mistaken.
Had you worked with Delbert before? Or?
I met Delbert backstage at the Ryman Auditorium one other time, and he stood there and watched my set. When I got off stage, he said, "Who are you?" And we hugged, and that was of course, that had been, gosh, I think that was like 2012 or something like that, and it was a good while ago. I didn't have his phone number per se, but I did have lots of phone numbers of people that were around him. And so, and my manager, Brian Smith, knew Delbert, and more importantly, knew Wendy, who kind of is, she runs Ramrod. You don't get in the room with Delbert unless you get through Wendy. So, which is pretty cool. So he called her for me, and Moose was on the road at that point with Bob Seger. So I kind of took over, set the sessions up with my mix engineer, which ended up being Vance Powell over at Sputnik. So all the Chris Stapleton stuff. Vance is a guy who's also just got this massive brain and big ears for every kind of music you can possibly imagine. He's got a British rock punk band coming in one day, and then he's working with Chris, the next week, and then he's with Brian Setzer, and then he's with all over the map. And he does a lot of Jack White stuff and the Raconteurs and so forth. And then Pete Lyman at Infrasonic Sound did the mastering. So I set up these, duets that Moose and I kind of talked about, and I either made the call myself, or in Delbert's case, Brian made the call to Wendy. We sent the song over, and I think it was a matter of like 2 days. We heard back, and it was a resounding, he loves this song and loves Heidi's voice, and went on and was very, she was really sweet and said, say when and where, and we're into it. We set the session up over at Vance's place, and which happened to be close for Delbert. And it was funny because he asked what key the song was in, and I said it's in the key of E. So he brought an A harp, literally not a him being such a great harmonica player and one of my harmonica heroes. I thought he'd come in with a case, and as most of us do. And he came in with one A harp in his back pocket, which was pretty cool. He started out kind of dancing around me through the vocal mic on what we call clean harp, and I was playing through a copper mic, so it gave it that dirty tone. So he was doing some answers to that, and then we turned him loose to sing, and it was just like your favorite old pair of jeans that fit just perfect.
And a house full of sin. Things are bad as they ever been. If trouble was money, I'd have more money than any man should. I'm open for business in your neighborhood. Blues is my business, and business is good.
If I had $1 for every be drinking fine wine and eating caviar. If trouble was money, I'd have more money than any man in shoes. That's right. I'm open for business in your neighborhood. The blues is my business, and business is good. I said blues is my business, business is good.
We sat, I think Randy Hauser came in after that, and we all sat around and just chewed the fat for 3 or 4 hours that afternoon, after the work was done. And so it was, that was really pure joy. Jim Lauderdale came over to my home studio. Moose was in town, so Moose came over to our studio on that one. So there was a lot of, Moose, what do you think about this? Heidi, what do you think about this? And listening to what we needed to add. We both are a big fan of harmonies. So it was a lot of fun to just build these things. And also, there's some songs on this record that didn't need a whole lot of messing with. There's a song that I wrote with Chris Stapleton and Trent Willman called When Heaven Falls. And it actually was the last song that we cut. And we cut about 18 songs and trimmed the fat afterwards. And I think that we ended up using my tracking vocal, which was pretty tired and rather hoarse, but there was a sort of a pain and a timing and something that we both really liked about how the fact that it really wasn't trying too hard. It wasn't too fancy. It was just honest.
When you do a song like When Heaven Falls, is it a gut-wrenching experience that helps you to create something like that? Or is it more along the lines of this was kind of a past experience that's just been kind of buried in my soul and in my heart, and it's time to bring it out and create this body of work?
In that particular instance, there was a specific thing that triggered that idea and sort of the meaning behind it, and it was the passing of my mother from multiple sclerosis. She passed away all the way back in 2004, and my father was not far behind, passing from ALS. So just a really strange situation there going on with your both parents having neuro diseases like that.
How tough was that in the studio for you?
Well,
it was cathartic?
It was both. I absolutely. First of all, just the creating of it. It was interesting because Bob, I lost her, and then I actually heard about it while I was an hour out from walking into a sold out, arena in Bismarck, North Dakota on February 22nd. So the snowbanks were as high as you could. They had sent the driver to come get us. I was still with Trick Pony. I was kind of quiet, and the guys asked me, what's going on? And I just said, my mom just died. And everybody went, oh my God. And of all the people we worked a lot with Montgomery Gentry, and we were working with them that night. I think Ira had made a call. And so when I walked in the back door there, everybody, Robin and all their guys, Troy and Eddie and everybody from the band, they were all there to greet me, which was even harder because then, then it becomes real. And
right.
Of course, I'm bawling and I'm trying to figure, and they said, listen, if you don't want to go on tonight, you don't have to. And I'd never been faced with anything like that. So I went into the green room bathroom. It was the only place I could get away from everybody. And I sat on the counter and bawled my eyes out, and I prayed. I said, and I prayed to God, but I also was talking to my mom, and I said, where do you want me to be? Because I knew I couldn't get on a plane that night. It was already too late. Bobby, was kind of almost like an axe handle came down between my ears, just hit me in the head. And it was my mom saying,
what I like to call a celestial 2x4.
Full on.
Yeah.
Well said. That's what I was looking for right there. Yeah. And it was very clear to me that, it was like she was saying, listen, this is what we've always wanted for you. This is, you're following your dream. You love what you do. Get your butt out there and get through this show, and we'll deal with the rest later. And it was like, okay. And I hopped off the counter and I dried up my tears as best I could. And I walked into the green room where, of course, there stood everybody. And I said, let's do this thing. And of course, the Montgomery Gentry crew was not a whole lot different than our Trick Pony crew. And so they brought out a big tray of whiskey, and my mom would sip on whiskey. She wasn't a heavy drinker at all, but before dinner she would have a little sip of whiskey and a little wine with dinner sometimes. And so we all did, kind of a toast to my mom. And I went out there and did not shed a tear and put on that show as if nothing had happened. And then they called us back for an encore. And everybody's standing up and they're screaming. And the guy said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "I don't know why, if I'm a glutton for punishment or what, but I want to do the gospel song that we wrote for her, which is on one of the Trick Pony records called Mary Ann's Song, that Chris Christopherson came in and did the recitation." And they all looked at me and said, are you sure? You really want to do that? And I walked out, and it was a strange choice, but that was cathartic. And even though I did weep, and I did finally just very quickly let the crowd know that I had just gotten a call prior to, and that my mom had passed away. And there was this overwhelming, resounding from the audience, and I just felt their love. And I felt like that was a good time to begin the grieving process. Now, fast forward, that was 2004, and I wrote When Heaven Falls with Chris and Trent back in 2010 or 11. So it was one of those gems that sat literally in my catalog purposely because it was a unique kind of song, and I knew that at some place down the road maybe it would find its home. And because it was so personal for me, it was the second song we wrote that day. I think definitely my mom's passing was the glue that brought that together, and what heaven sounds like, what it feels like, what it looks like. And so we wanted it to hurt, because it was about that. And so that's why we used my tracking vocal, and we didn't really mess with the track much. It was really just, okay, guys, we don't know let's just count to 4 and let's go. And we worked on an arrangement, but we prayed that it just went off so beautifully, and it's just angelic. And yeah, it was a special moment in the record, I think.
It's the burning of an angel dam that lingers in the soul of man. It's the anger in the alcohol. That's how it is when heaven falls. It's the fear upon the dying face, clinging to the hand of fate. It's the back that's up against the wall. That's how it looks when heaven falls. Hearts don't know when it's over. Love don't leave when it's gone. And the wind doesn't end with a farewell kiss. That's how it is when heaven falls. It's the silence of a barren field.
We're going to take another break, get another word in for one of our sponsors. When we come back, we're going to have some more conversation here with Heidi Newfield.
Hey guys, this is Danny Myrick, and you're listening to The Business Side of Music.
You're listening to The Business Side of Music.
My name is Garrett Hope. I am a composer, coach, podcaster, and speaker. I've been focused on building my music business since the early 2000s and helping others build their music businesses since 2015. I want to tell you about a free event I'm organizing for January. It's called the Ultimate Music Business Summit. It'll take place January 7, 8, and 9. Here's the deal. Through the summit, I want to help you build your own stimulus package for 2021. There will be over 21 teachers giving over 21 high-leverage business lessons you can use in your music business immediately so you can make 2021 the best year for your music ever. If you want to make more money with your music, grow your audience, or impact more people, this summit is for you. More than that, there will be a few live panel discussions so we can discuss this in real time. It's going to be amazing. And yes, it's free. This summit will give you real-world, not theoretical, strategies you can implement immediately. I promise you, with all the teachers lined up, you'll get something you've never thought of before. Even though building a business is hard, and trust me, no one is promising it's easy, it is possible. You just need the right tools and strategies. Get your free ticket today and reserve your spot in the summit. Build your own stimulus package for 2021. I look forward to seeing you at the summit. Go to musicsummit.biz, that's musicsummit.biz, to get your ticket today.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Back in the studio, Heidi Newfield is with us. We're talking about your new album. Is it out?
It is out. One would ask oneself, why would you want to put your first full-length LP or full-length record out? This is a big record with a lot of big sounds on it. And why would you dare put it out in the middle of a pandemic? You know, I'd been doing a lot of live streaming, and because, of course, as you know, most of us, our wheels stopped rolling, and it's been a year of reflection. There's been some good things and some lessons learned, but it's been a year definitely of, you know, sort of fear and chaos and worry and stress. And
yeah, but what better time to release something? Because in a couple ways, and I mean this in a good way too, but you have a captive audience now.
Yeah.
Because people don't have an opportunity to get out and do things and become distracted. We're all basically, or should be, sitting at home, hibernating as best as we can.
Right.
So what a better time to be releasing the Barfly Sessions, right?
That's exactly, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. We had a release date for June 5th slated. The album was finished at the end of 19, so we were ready to come out full, you know.
All gangbusters, here we go.
All gangbusters, and really, you know, picking a cool, more Americana-based team, from a publicist to radio guys to you name it. And the first time in my career that I was not doing this with a major record label and doing this as an indie artist, which is a whole entirely different can of worms. But it was refreshing. And I mean, I sat on the floor and packed my own, because they actually really like, at Americana stations, reporting stations, they
like
want
the physical product, yeah.
And I do too. I like to hold either vinyl or CDs in my hand. I like to be able to read who played on what and see the artwork and all of that.
Thank you very much. We talk about this on the show, to see who played on what on the albums, to read the liner notes. To me, it brings so much more of an intimacy to the project, and allows you to just kind of get a different dimension of what it's all about, other than just putting in some earbuds and listening.
It completely does. It's like, you know, I grew up, and probably, I guarantee you did too, reading the backs of vinyl and whatever, you know, CDs or whatever packaging it came in, because I wanted to know what musicians played on it. I wanted to know who wrote these songs. And in some cases, you know, you'd say, oh, I bet that's a Bobby Braddock song, or I bet that's a so-and-so song, you know, and loved playing those games and seeing the artwork and what was hopefully, in most cases, the artist, not necessarily the label's visual version of what this record should look like. So I think there's a lot to be said for the visual. What images come with this? What do you think of when you look at this? What is the artist dressed like? What are they looking like? What are they wearing? It means something.
It does, and it provides, once again, I use that word a lot, but it provides that other element of intimacy to get to know who that artist is.
Right.
Yeah, I know.
Because we live in a world where we are so inundated with, on every level, from the bar band level all the way up to the top. There is a lot of artists, and there are a lot of artists and or music too, and places and digital outlets and voice competitions and you name it. In this day and age, people are just almost overwhelmed with so much music and so many different types of artists coming at them at all times. You know, I have to ask myself, what makes me stand out? What makes me special? What can I do that will make people stop and pay attention for, and instead of that squirrel mentality, which is, you know, I'm going to give you 3 seconds and I'm out of here. How do I capture their attention?
But doing what you're doing, though, you're providing a little more ammunition. You're providing more opportunity for that potential listener to spend more time with you than, like you said, the 3 seconds that we normally would otherwise.
That's right. And you know, the other thing I think I've gotten to, and it's taken me a while, Bob, and I don't know why it took me so long, hard-headed, I suppose, but then to realize and fully realize that I can't please everyone, and I'm naturally kind of a people pleaser. And I tried to do that with, in our dichotomy with Trick Pony and our sort of chemistry, we were all A-type personalities, and you've got everybody trying to, at first it was us against the world, and we were very much a team. And then over time, what happens to bands, as you know, is, this guy thinks his song's better than this guy's song. And there was a lot of that going on between my cohorts, and it made for just following history, my history. I've learned a lot from it. And I finally gotten to a place where, and that shows through on the Barfly Sessions, where I care, but I'm not going to be everybody's cup of tea. And that's okay.
You're just being yourself.
I'm just being authentic. I'm just being myself. And I no longer have any desire whatsoever to kiss anybody's backside or be something I'm not for the sake of, I've always had a really good work ethic, and I work my butt off, but I don't want to ever do anything that's not real to me, because if it's not real to me, then that's going to show through to my audience. So those days of doing that, and that's all the way down from the artwork to the writing of the song, the picking of the songs, and never again will I stop putting music out or let a label or somebody that I'm part of my team dictate. I want to be one of those artists that, kind of like Willie, just keep putting the music out there. And, a very wise man who I adore, Stan Burnett, who I worked with at CAA for years, said, follow the music and the money will come. And he was right. As long as I stay true to myself, God blesses you, and you just move forward, and the fans show up. And you might have some nights where they're not all there, but eventually you build your audience. And I'm kind of blessed because I've been able to keep the Trick Pony base audience and build a whole new audience with my solo stuff. And then now with this new record, I'm literally building an entirely new audience on top of that, and not really ticking anybody off in the meantime, which is not by design. It just has worked out that way so far.
I want to talk about another song on the album, because we talked about When Heaven Falls, but then you have, I guess, at the other end of the spectrum, at least for me when I listened to it a little bit, Whiskey Town.
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about polarity opposites.
Yeah.
That song, what was driving that for you?
I always, if I'm co-writing with somebody, and I do like to write alone, but I found that there's just something so magical and something so wonderful about sitting in a room with another person that you respect and enjoy. If it ends up being two others, that's cool too, where you are hearing their perspective, and that you've got this idea and you're taking it a certain direction, and then they come in and go, hey, what about this? It takes you to a whole different place that you might not have thought of otherwise. There's something so wonderful about brainstorming and sitting in a room and pulling off of each other's strengths or experiences. That's what happens every time I'm in a room with Leslie Satcher and Al Anderson. We usually write about the least amount of songs that we'll write in one day is 2. Usually we'll write 3, and ironically, there are 3 songs on this record that were written in one day.
Wow.
And they too were, and most of these are new songs. I don't want everybody to think these are old songs that were just sitting around. There are a little handful of songs, When Heaven Falls being one of them. But in one day, we wrote I Could Fall For You, the Bakersfield kind of twang. I had George Jones on my mind and Buck Owens on my mind, and I wanted that kind of, I said, no, you don't hear a woman anywhere on the radio singing, well, I feel tears, the race is on kind of thing. I said, and using that range, and I want to use that. And once you start Al Anderson on he's like a freight train, and once you start putting him in focus of what you're looking for, you have to stop him and go, pay attention, stop right there, you're on it. Yeah, don't go anywhere else, you know. And then Leslie and I just literally just go crazy writing lyrics out, and we're just like, what about this? What about this? Yes, that's, high-fiving each other, and it's just this room of energy, and it's visceral. I mean, it's palpable. Everything's like just happening all at once. And the 3 songs that were written that ironically, I thought, oh, these are all so different and so cool. And someday they're going to find, like I said earlier, their place. It was I Could Fall For You, completely Bakersfield, completely like totally country. I Won't Wait Around, which kicks the record off, which is a wacky, I kind of liken it to a little bit of Led Zeppelin meets, there's some kind of Beach Boys kind of in the bridge, and it sort of goes to a weird 70s place that's sort of lofty and strange.
That's kind of a weird amalgamation.
Well, it is.
Maybe I should say unique amalgamation.
It's weird. No,
Yeah.
it's okay. You were right on the first one. And we wrote that, and then we turned around and wrote Whiskey Town. I showed up to the session, and I had Stevie Ray Vaughan just blaring in my truck, and I just love a big, fat, groovy shuffle. There's just something about that groove that just makes people move and
feel good.
It's a feel-good thing. Even if it doesn't even matter what the feel is. But I had the title Whiskey Town, and I said it just kind of almost needs to be this, let's rattle off some lines and tell them a story. And
I drug myself up out of bed with an aching head round supper time. Yeah. Red beans and rice and hot cornbread, and then I said I feel like a honky-tonk. Then I slipped into those faded jeans that I wear when I feel like getting down. That's right, I did. My mama told me, my daddy told me, girl, don't go wandering down to Whiskey Town.
Leslie's so brilliant at that. And so there goes Al, and he just cuts into this big shuffle, and we just started rattling off lines, and we wrote all 3 of those songs in one day. There was about 6 months there where we were just writing all the time together, and a lot of music was written. And some of that actually ended up on the What Am I Waiting For record with, Johnny and June. I wrote a really beautiful torchy ballad that was kind of inspired by kind of a Connie Smith sort of feel with Al. Leslie had to go, so he just pulls my chair closer and goes, "Do you like Connie Smith?" And I said, "Like her? What do you go? Are you insane?" "Yes." He said, "Well, let's go there." And so we wrote a song called All I Want to Do, and it kind of is reminiscent of, I kind of want to crawl on a piano and lay down and or sit up in a beautiful gown and sing that song.
Kind of be that lounge torch singer.
That torchy kind of thing, yeah, definitely. It's really very, very retro.
What is next for Heidi Newfield? I mean, and I ask this question a lot, but obviously this whole pandemic's going to end at some point. Going to get back out on the road and tour?
The answer is absolutely. I mean, I was driving here, and I live on the other side of town in West Nashville, and you're over here, I would say, a little closer to the airport. And as I was driving down I-40, I couldn't get out of my mind how many times I have had my truck and or car completely loaded to make a fly date where we're maybe going to meet the bus somewhere or whatever, but just busting, tail to make it to the curbside check-in on time and be there meet my band. And how I kind of loved that chaos that was running through, that it's almost like that monkey brain. You got so much going on, and you got to make this on time, and you got, these calls to make, and there's all this busy brain stuff going on, and how that's gone this year, and what a kind of in a backwards way, what a blessing that's sort of been. And that's what I was meaning by earlier, that as kind of crappy as this year has been, and on so many levels, and the fear and the worry, it has also been, I'm trying to also look at the message that I think that's being, messages that I think are being sent down, and I'm just paying attention. So a lot of reading, a lot more reading, I should say, a lot of time checking on people, taking the time to check on people. Do you need anything? Is there anything I can do?
We should all be doing that.
We should be doing that all the time. And, and there's a plethora of things that have come with this year. But to answer your question, Bob, I'm sorry, I kind of made my way around that one, but I definitely missed the road. And this year, as I think made all of us artists who do love working the road, just never take it for granted again. For me, because and this is just me personally, making records is a lot of fun, and I love putting myself in what I call, studio mode. And that's where I put my brain, and that's where I'm focused. And it's how do we make the best record? What songs need to go on this? Okay, this is a wackadoo idea, but let's do it anyways. And, you put yourself in studio mode. When you're writing for a project, or maybe you're just on a really creative role, you go in writer's mode. And I find that those times come in waves for me. I might go into, and I might incubate for a while and sort of, I don't write anything for, a month. And then suddenly I'll find that there's this creative wave that comes along, and I've got some songs and ideas and things I need to get out.
Right.
The same goes for the road. And in my world, this has been from day one. Getting on a stage and playing for an audience I cannot begin to express in words how important that part of it is for me. That's how I build the majority of my audience, and always have, has been people seeing me live. I feel so at home on a stage. Vulnerability and all, like letting it all just, even on the bad nights, the stage is just this place that I can go to. And this exchange of energy and this thing that happens between, me and, if I'm with my full band, or if it's a quartet or a trio, whatever configuration, it's just so important to be able to navigate through a show and be able to share that with a live audience. I miss it so much. So yes, absolutely, I'll be touring. And I am glad I put this record out in 2020. It hasn't been easy. It has not been the release that anybody that put music out this year,
right.
It has, for the most part, has not been the release that they expected. But I keep a good attitude about it, and I expect to be able to work it next year. And like you, none of us have a crystal ball. None of us know exactly when this thing is going to really get back to, get back in full swing. When an arena full of people feel comfortable together, being together, pumping their fists in the air and drinking beer and listening to their favorite acts and or tour. That might be the end of next year. That might be late next summer. We just don't know. So I have to kind of be prepared for whenever that is. And I kind of have wrapped my brain around it at this point, tried to brace myself for that. And then when that time comes, I will work the Barfly Sessions Volume 1 almost like it's a brand new record, which will be exciting to bring out to people. And then I guess the other upside is that I'll already be, if not all the way through, halfway through a new record in my mind, if not in the studio already, to back it up. So that's the goal, is to just stay creative and keep the music coming. And I agree with you. I think people need new music now probably more than ever, and that's why I chose to go ahead and push it back from June 5th, but August 28th it came out to the world and on all digital outlets. We're actually doing vinyl in January. People can get on my website at HeidiNewfield.com. Just not a clever name. And
easy way to find you, though.
Easy way to find me. Yeah. It's very informative, and we'll fill your orders. Cool merch. And then we're going to be adding the vinyl and some new merch to that as well at the top of the new year. So people can find the physical product and all the merch on my website. And then they can get on any digital outlet and call their Americana radio stations, or their country's radio stations for that matter, and ask for something off the Barfly Sessions.
Yeah, let's get some spins out there.
Heck yeah.
Heidi, thank you so much for being on the show. This was great.
Thank you, Bob. What a pleasure. Thank you.
The Business Side of Music is the creation of Tom Sabella and Tracy Snow and is produced by Bob Bender. The Business Side of Music is recorded at Music Dog Studios in Nashville, Tennessee. Production sound design by Keith Stark. Voiceover and promo by Lisa Fuson.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.